This video is not financial advice because I'm not a financial advice YouTuber. If I was a financial advice YouTuber, my advice to you would be, give me your money. Give me all your money. No, I'm just kidding. But when it comes to things like stocks and stuff, I do have a basic knowledge of it. I do have a portfolio, and the stock market is a very interesting thing. It's also something that a lot of video game fans tend to look at with certain companies and think they can make a definitive decision on what is happening with this company and proclaim either success or doom and gloom. When, if you know anything about a stock market, it's a very volatile market that is constantly changing based on things that are happening. Now, this isn't going to be a Nintendo is doomed video or anything like that. It's just going to be a video where I look at information that has been provided, give my thoughts on it, and then try and come to some conclusions. Whether you agree with me or not, I mean, that's up to you, pal. So what am I talking about? What are people talking about? Why are video game fans sitting at their computers thinking that they're stock experts when they probably don't have a stock portfolio or anything like that? Well, it's because of your favorite doctor and mine, all right? The man himself, Dr. Serkan Toto. And if you know anything about Dr. Serkan Toto, the CEO of Games Industry Consolist, Canton Games, advisor for Unicorns, Amico Brands, Seven Lingual, Never Financial Advice. See, the doctor and I are the same sort of people. I do question, like, is he a podiatrist or something like that? But Dr. Serkan Toto put out this tweet yesterday. Got a lot of Nintendo fans in their feelings, and they had to rush out and defend things and say you're wrong and stuff like that. But I kind of look at it from a bit of a different perspective. So we're going to talk about it, his reasonings behind this information, and then come to some conclusions. So Nintendo stock in Japan is sliding. All-time high of 14,795 yen in August of 2025 closed at 9,950 yen today. So, minus 33% in 5 months. And you could clearly see the graph here that supports this data of 6 months. And you could see it go up here, and then it kind of went up again, and then it kind of trickled down, and now we're sitting around here. You know, obviously, you know, there is a decline in the stock price. Now, what is the reasoning behind this, according to Dr. Serkan Toto? Well, he's blessing the rains down in Africa and says investors are spooked by possible price hikes, lack of first-party hits, and US-EU hardware discounts during the holidays. Now, there's some things I have to say about that. Possible price hikes, that's just reality. That is the reality of the world that we live in today. With RAM prices going up, the system is going to go up in price. This will also impact other companies as well that are pertaining to the stock market unless they have a strong AI component. I mean, if you look at Microsoft's stock, you would think Xbox is the most successful thing in the world, but Nintendo is obviously very, very different because unlike Microsoft, Nintendo doesn't have their hands in a whole bunch of different things. Yes, they do have different ventures and outlets that they have, but their primary thing is video games and things related to video games. So if the industry is kind of in a bit of a lull, then that is something that will deeply impact them, unlike with other video game companies that also have a wider web to spread out in order to get their money from different places. Lack of first-party hits. I mean, I kind of agree with that. You know, I've gone on record as saying, you know, 2025 was all right, but I didn't like Kirby Air Riders. Metroid Prime 4 was a disappointment. You know, Donkey Kong Bonanza I thought was really good. Mario Kart World was fun for a while, but it seems like that game needed some DLC of some sort that hasn't come along for it yet. And of course, you have the fact that, you know, for the big holiday title, there was Pokemon, but there wasn't anything like Mario related or Zelda related, which a lot of people were kind of hoping for when it came to this system. And of course, you have the fact that Pokemon was a cross-generational game. You didn't have to buy a Nintendo Switch 2 to play the latest Pokemon game because they obviously wanted to cater to the audience on the Switch 1 that makes sense. But when you have a flagship system and your biggest game is a cross-generational game and your previous system was extremely successful and your newer system is like so new that you don't really need to buy it right away unless you wanted to play the new Mario Kart or Donkey Kong Bonanza, I mean, it did make sense. The US and EU hardware discounts during the holidays, I don't really know about that, because those were done by retailers. It wasn't a thing all across the board or anything like that. The retailers were discounting things to get people in the store to buy other things. I've talked about this ad nauseum because it seems like people don't understand how big box retail works. You know, when it comes to video game consoles and stuff like that, they're not making much money on these new system sales. And obviously it can add up over time. But the thought process is, you know, $450 for the Mario Kart World Bundle instead of $500. Well, then, you know, some parents go into a store to buy that for their kid, and now they're thinking, oh, we save $50, and they spend that $50 on higher profit items that don't cost Walmart, you know, a lot of money, because now you've saved that $50, so you could spend that $50 on something that will make Walmart more money than they would have made selling the Switch 2 with Mario Kart World at $500. You know, so, I mean, I guess it is something. Maybe an investor would look at that, but if an investor doesn't realize that that's one of the reasons why, then obviously they're not too smart with their own money. But there is something else that I kind of want to look at with this, and that is the fact that, yes, this indeed is the information that we have. So, you know, you could see here, this is the same 6-month graph that Dr. Serkan Toto put out there. And you can see, like, you know, down 26% for the past 6 months. However, the thing about stocks is you don't necessarily, I mean, there are short squeeze stocks and stuff, but most stocks and most things that you put money into are more of a long game sort of thing. So if you pull back the curtain and go back to 5 years, I mean, look at the stock here. You know, this is still decent Switch one time, 2021. You know, 4 years into the system, like, this is still decent Switch one time. And you could see it kind of slowed down a bit. There would be spikes, though, here and there. And then you see that overall, you know, it's down 0.83%. But is that something to be super concerned about? Because realistically speaking, it's about where it was back in June of 2021. Now, you might be saying, well, RGT, they just launched a brand new system. You would expect it to be higher. And I don't think that that's necessarily wrong. But like I said, like we just talked about, when it comes to the first-party software and stuff like that, that's what's missing for a lot of people. People are also waiting for Nintendo to do their financial report. You know, that's going to answer. The thing about stocks is there's two types of people that really mess around with stocks mostly. The people that are going to look at that financial report, and if they like the information, they're going to want to invest into Nintendo, thus bringing the stock back up. And then there's people that are going to look at it from a Nintendo Direct perspective or something like that. A Nintendo Direct happens, all these new games get announced, excitement is at an all-time high once again for the system, and it's like, oh wow, this game is coming and this game is coming and stuff like that. The narrative changes online and then people start to invest. You don't think that there's going to be a spike when there's a Nintendo Direct that happens, you know, next month or whatever? You don't think there's going to be a spike when the new Mario movie comes out? Like, of course there's going to be. The whole thing about stocks is, like, it's an ebb and flow thing, you know? And I don't think that this is necessarily the end of the world, because Nintendo is a very specific company when it comes to what they do and what they have. They're not doing stuff with AI. They're not Microsoft. They don't have Windows. They're not Sony. They don't have all these other different branches of their company. So it's going to be more reactive towards the video game side of things. And if you have kind of a soft year at the, you know, for 2025, like you had with the Nintendo Switch 2, in my opinion at least, things like this are going to happen. I think people will run with this, though, as like some crazy thing that, oh, Nintendo's screwed and stuff like that, which I don't think is fair. And then I think there are going to be people who just, you know, completely write it off. And I'm not really writing it off. I'm just saying you need to have a good Direct. You need to have games coming out in 2026. The movie will help this as well. and then things get trending in the right direction. You know, like I said, there are peaks and valleys here. You know, there are lulls. Like, it was down to 11 at one point. It was down to 953 on March 3rd of 2023. And then it was also as high as, you know, $25. So it's a give and take sort of thing. You can't just look at, you know, what's been happening lately, because that's going to affect all video game companies. Point blank, period. But that's just my opinion on it. Maybe your opinion is completely different, and that's fine. Like I said, I'm not a financial advisor channel. It might be a decent time to buy some stock in them, because I do think it'll go back up, even if it just goes up to, you know, $20 or something like that. If you're buying it at 15, that's profit. But, you know, I'm not here to tell you to do anything. I have Vanguard, so it does all that sort of stuff for me. I don't mess around too much with individual stocks anymore. I did with crypto, but I didn't really care for all that. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think of this in the comment section down below. Is it doom and gloom? Is it all over? Is Mario going to have to whore himself out on a street corner to make ends meet, to provide for him and Princess Peach? And Bowser's going to be the pimp. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this. Thank you for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.